Hey everybody, it's me Amanda with Once in a Wild, and welcome back to Once in a Wild Wednesday, where every Wednesday we try to go live at 6:30 p.m. Central Standard Time across social media to bring the zoo to you virtually. The program is free, but if you would like to donate to our little zoo and help our cause, feed our animals, and take care of them, you can do so. There are several donation options. If you want to visit onceinawild.com/donate, you can find all of your options there. We've got Venmo, Cash App, we've got PayPal, we even got an Amazon wish list, and we even have Patreon. So whatever floats your boat, feel free to go ahead and donate. And every little bit helps, and we appreciate it quite a bit. But if you'd like to just sit back and relax and enjoy the show, you can learn about a few animals coming out on the live stream here in just a few minutes. We are going to have a few animals, 3 animals of different types. So we can't wait to see everybody joining in. If you want to leave a comment or a question down below, please keep it family friendly. We are a family friendly channel. And without further ado, I think we should go ahead and get started. Okay, welcome back. And it is time for Once in a Wild Wednesday, our live stream that we try to every Wednesday go live across social media. We do our very best. Last week I was actually feeling under the weather, so we ran a rerun, so I hope you don't mind. If I can't talk, then I can't do the show. So I was feeling a little bit grumbly in the throat, if you know what I mean. So I was getting over a cold, and I'm still getting over a cold. So bear with me if I have to cough or take a break. I do have my water with me, and I have a cough drop that I just ate. So, well, I ate it already. But hopefully that will help me throughout the duration of the show, and we should be fine. And we'll just keep our fingers crossed and give me some good vibes out there. Give me a little comment down below if you want to leave a comment. And if you have questions about any of the animals coming out, feel free to always ask your questions and let me know what you want to know, and I'll do my very best to answer your questions. Hello, Instagram. We are on Instagram Live as well if you want to head over to Instagram and watch it over there too. We try to be everywhere. The only one I typically do not go live on is going to be TikTok right now, just because I only have one mobile device, my phone, and I can go live on Instagram and not TikTok at the same time. So maybe we'll figure that out. Maybe we'll use an additional phone someday and go live on TikTok as well. But we do have a TikTok, and if you want to support us in a free way, you can join us over on TikTok or whatever social media you prefer. We've of course got Instagram and Facebook and YouTube, and subscribe or like or follow or share, comment, all the things that help us out quite a bit, and share Once in a Wild's message with the world. The best way, though, to help us out is actually by purchasing your own animal encounter. So if you are new here and you would like to learn a little bit about what we do, let me go ahead and tell you. We are a mobile zoo, or a traveling zoo, if you will, here in San Antonio, Texas, which is where we are based out of. We can travel all the way to Austin or surrounding cities as well, so no worries. If you happen to live a little bit outside of San Antonio, that is fine. New Braunfels, Schertz, all those places, Cibolo, we go there all the time, so that is not a problem. You just let me know where you live, and I'll let you know whether or not we can go there. But we do bring animals to in-person events, whether they be just general events, maybe like public events. We can bring animals to classrooms, birthday parties for private events or gatherings, anything at all. You can do it. And you just let me know what you're interested in, and hopefully we can bring the zoo to you. But if you don't happen to live anywhere near us, we also can do that sort of thing virtually. So we can conduct a virtual Zoom where you get to pick the animals that you want to meet, and you can learn about them, of course, and ask questions, and it's a lot of fun. So those are still kind of popular for our out-of-state clientele, if you will, for schools and just general gatherings, just for fun. So those are still an option for you as well. Something for everybody. We also have a little bit of different animals for everyone. We've got furry animals like mammals. We've got feathery animals like birds. We've got reptiles, amphibians, and creepy crawlies like arachnids, spiders and scorpions and bugs, and something for everyone. And we try to always base our encounters on education, but we can keep it a little more casual. If you want to just have a photo opportunity with our animals or get to know them a little bit more casually, maybe you have little kids that don't really have a very long attention span, that is okay. Once in a Wild is for everyone, and that is one of our primary goals as a company, is to be accessible to anyone and everyone who wants to meet some animals, or who loves animals, or who just wants to maybe get to know some different facts or fun things, or get to know animals that you've never seen before, or animals that you love and you know a lot about. Maybe you just want to meet another one. So you let me know if you would like any of that, and that is the very best way to help us out. Everything is fully customized, and all you have to do is contact us via onceinawild.com, or you can find my number, which is always in the description and also in the bio description as well in Instagram and everywhere else. The number on our website at onceinawild.com is the number to call and ask questions, or you can even leave a text at that number, and I will be happy to get you started on your next animal encounter. So I know we might have a little bit of a slow night tonight because I didn't really announce the live stream tonight. We always do a little post, but I didn't make a big deal out of it today. So we'll see who is on the show. I have a few people watching on Instagram. Hello. And regardless, you can actually watch the show afterwards. If you want to replay it on YouTube or over on Facebook, you can actually watch some of the old shows if you want. And I did want to actually bring that up because Easter's right around the corner, right? By the way, we don't have any public events planned coming up too soon, but if we do have any public events where you can join us and see us in person, for public events, obviously, where anybody is welcome, we always post that on our website as well, onceinawild.com. We'll post that right on the homepage so you can see what events are coming up. We had a couple of we were very busy this past weekend and the weekend before that. We had a couple of events. One was our Once Upon a Party event for it was an Easter egg event basically, and that went very, very well. And we also had our event the weekend prior to that. Before that, we had Pet Fest, so those were a lot of fun. So we've been very, very busy. This coming up weekend is going to be Easter though. I know a lot of you are getting curious about rabbits, and maybe you wanted to buy a rabbit, maybe you're thinking about getting a rabbit for your kids, and we want to make sure that you guys are educated as much as possible in the care of a rabbit. It's not super simple. It's actually a lot more complicated than people know, most people in general. And even if you've had a rabbit in the past, a lot of their care has been upgraded and updated, so you want to make sure and do some research or even talk to us, and we'd be happy to get you started with rabbit care or improve your own rabbit's care. But I say all of that to say this: I actually have a playlist on our YouTube, so go and check out Once in a Wild Zoo on YouTube, and we actually have a playlist which it talks about animal care, and there's a rabbit video all about rabbits. We have Sandor, the Flemish giant rabbit, the best rabbit ever, and he's actually on that live stream from the past, and we talk all about rabbit care, what it takes to take care of them, what it takes to house them, everything that you can think of pretty much. We do try to cover on that live stream. And that is a great one to rewatch before you make the decision to get a rabbit. And we honestly don't think rabbits are for everyone, and they're certainly not toys for kids. We want to make sure that at Easter time, you tell all your friends and family that, hey, don't necessarily buy a rabbit on impulse, or when you go to the pet store, like, oh my gosh, it's so cute, I just want one. That's not a good enough reason to get a pet, and it's not a toy for children. So we want to make sure that we think before we purchase for any occasion, but Easter time ends up being a kind of a terrible time for rabbits in general in people's homes. A lot of people do adopt baby bunnies or any rabbit on impulse, and then they change their mind, and those rabbits end up homeless in shelters a lot of the time, or just outright abandoned. So we don't want that to happen. We want to make sure you guys are doing your research. Rabbits are wonderful pets for the right family. I actually think rabbits make one of the best type of pets for the right family. If they are taken care of, and all their needs are met, and their veterinary care is top notch, and everything is everything's going well for them, they make wonderful pets, and they really are very rewarding pets. But if you do it incorrectly, they can, kind of have their challenges, and they may not meet your expectations of what you were necessarily wanting in a pet. So please make sure and do lots and lots of research, do correct research, and talk to people that have rabbits that are so-called experts, I guess, or even if they're not experts, they're experienced in rabbit care. Maybe they have one already. Get on Facebook if you have Facebook, or any of the other, maybe Discord or something like that, and get in groups that are kind of like expertise groups, if you will, or hobbyist groups, and they will let you know everything you need to know about whatever pet you're thinking about adopting, including rabbits. Rabbits are domesticated. They can make wonderful, wonderful pets, and they have a lot of personality, but they're not toys. They're not animals to be thrown in a cage and forgotten about. So we want to make sure and bring that up. So don't forget to check out our playlist over on YouTube, which said, I believe it's animal care and advice or something like that. It's one of those playlists, and you can't miss it. It says, is a rabbit the right pet for me, or something like that. I'm pretty sure that's what I titled it, but you'll find it. I have faith in you that you'll be able to find it. Or you can go to Once in a Wild Zoo on what is it? Once in a Wild. Well, is it Once in a Wild Zoo or Once in a Wild? Oh no, I don't even know my own YouTube. It's one of those. Once in a Wild or Once in a Wild Zoo. You'll find us. You'll see our logo and everything. It looks like this. beautiful logo. I'm just drawing a blank because this is real life and it's live. I'm pretty sure it's Once in a Wild, actually. So go to Once in a Wild on YouTube. If you're not already watching on YouTube, you'll find it. There's also links in the description boxes and in our bio description on Instagram. But anyway, if you find our YouTube somehow, or you can go to onceinawiled.com, our YouTube link is there as well. But if you go to Once in a Wild YouTube, you can find our mini playlist, but there's a playlist all about animal care and advice, and go to that rabbit video and you'll be able to find it, I promise. So I just watched this today to make sure it was still there, just to make sure it was still good advice and everything's good. I made it last year and it still holds up. So everything's all good. That we do have one rabbit named Sandor. I actually didn't bring our rabbit today. I brought 3 smaller animals, and our final animal is actually going to be a bird, but our first 2 animals are right here in this room with me already. So let's go ahead and just bring them out. And happy Easter ahead of time. I hope you guys have a fun Easter coming up. Hope you have some fun plans coming up with your family. Maybe you're going to church. Maybe you're doing an Easter egg hunt at home, whatever it may be. I hope you have a wonderful time and everything. And what we're going to be doing is a private event on Easter Sunday. We're actually going to be working with a church who wanted a petting zoo. So we're going to be there for a while, pretty much all day. And we're grateful to have that booking. And yeah, so if you guys want us to come and do something similar for your church or your gathering, let me know and I'll make it happen. So our first wonderful animal coming out is going to be a regular on the show, but I was looking back and it doesn't look like she's been on the show in a minute. I could be wrong, but as far as I looked in the past, it's Frances the frog. She's an African bullfrog, also known as the Pixie Frog. The reason they call them a Pixie Frog is because part of their scientific name says Pixie-cephalus, which means small box-shaped head. So Pixie meaning small, box-shaped, of course, and head, tiny head. So basically they have a tiny head and a big fat body. Now, I don't mean that as an insult. This is actually a very rounded and kind of chunky looking species. That is the way they're supposed to look. And believe it or not, Frances, the African bullfrog, aka Pixie Frog, she is a very small specimen, believe it or not. She looks pretty big. She's about the size of a good-sized muffin top. Again, not an insult. But she could actually reach the size of almost a volleyball. That is how big that these guys get. They are a very long-lived frog. They can easily live into their 30s or more, maybe 35, 38. Long time. She's only 4.5. And as they age, they get bigger and bigger and bigger. And males especially are the ones that get volleyball-sized and bigger, and they weigh a few pounds. They're just enormous. And they're round-shaped. They're one of my favorite animals in all of Africa. They are, of course, an African species, and they typically live, I believe, in Central and South Africa. I have to re-look that up. I always struggle with remembering which African animals are from which exact region, but I'm pretty sure it's Central Southern, and or it could just be Southern. You know, look it up for me while you're watching. But anyway, it's definitely African, and it's definitely in like savannas, grasslands, and where they live is actually only going to have 2 seasons. And that's going to be the wet season and the dry season. So they're not really going to have to worry about cold, and they're not really going to have to worry about 4 seasons, spring, summer, fall, and winter, like we worry about here in the United States. Right now, where I live, it's Texas, and it's very warm, but we're coming into springtime, and it's almost as warm as summertime in some other places, but we're getting like crazy falling leaves and lots of flowers blooming and lots of pollen and warmer weather and rain and things like that. But it's warming up, which I'm really happy about because I love warm weather and I love Texas. But anyway, these guys are from Africa, like I said, and they only have the 2 seasons, the wet season and the dry season. So during the dry season, it can actually last quite a long time, anywhere from 2 to almost 9 months. It kind of just varies in that way. And it can be everything in between, maybe just 6 months that year, maybe just 4 months. It just kind of depends. But these guys actually go underground for the entire duration of the dry season. So they're going to go underground, dig a little tunnel for themselves, bury themselves completely, go to sleep. And before they go to sleep, they're actually going to create a slimy like film over their body with their own boogers, which is disgusting, but they have totally different types of boogers than we do. So they create basically a slime bag, which is, again, not an insult. It's probably a compliment for this type of animal. They will create a thin slime bag all over their body, which retains the moisture that they need to survive. And they basically just literally go to sleep, and they will shut their body down. They don't have to eat for the whole duration of the dry season. They're going to stay underground for months and months and months, at least a couple of months, if not all the way to 9 months sometimes to wait out the dry season. So it's just like when animals have to experience a very cold and long winter, they're going to hibernate sometimes. Not every animal hibernates for the winter, of course, but a lot of them do, especially animals like frogs or lizards and things like that that have to deal with a winter season. Some frogs in, say, China, for example, like the firebelly toad, the oriental firebelly toad, those guys actually do the same thing during the winter time. They'll go underground and shut their body down for the duration of the winter because there's really no resources. Their ponds and rivers and streams and things are going to pretty much freeze. So they're not going to be able to survive the winter unless they do something about it. So they're going to go underground and hibernate, but hibernation only happens for cold weather. This is what we call estivation in this case. So the African bullfrog doesn't have a winter season, they have a dry season. So they go underground and they estivate as opposed to hibernate. So it's called estivation instead of hibernation. And they'll go underground, they'll have that slime on top of their body, they'll shut their eyes, they'll shut down, go to sleep, and take a very long nap for the entire dry season. And as soon as the rains come back, those rains will trickle down into the dirt and start to drip, drip, drip on top of the frog. And that will actually wake them up. And they will they will actually start the process of their body waking back up, and they'll go, oh, the water is back, sounds good, it's warmer now. Or it's not, well, actually the dry season is cooler in this case, but I misspoke, I didn't mean warmer, I meant wetter. So it's going to be actually raining. Let her settle down, she's being all crazy. Just gonna try to climb right out of my hands, let her settle down real quick. So once the rains come back and that kind of wakes them up, they will start to actually wake up, and they will go ahead and pop out of the ground. They'll actually, before that, I'm getting ahead of myself again. They will eat the slime bag off of their own body. Delicious. Remember that slime bag is made out of their own snot, and that will keep the moisture in their skin, which is also covered in mucus because frogs are gross and they have a naturally moisturized mucousy skin, which is, by the way, why you shouldn't touch them, but we'll talk about that at the end. These guys will eat that slime layer bag off of their own body, and that way they can pop out of the ground, and they pop out and they say, where is a nice, good body of water? They're trying to find water immediately because number one, they're thirsty, and number two, it is time to breed. They don't know how long the wet season is going to last, the rainy season. So they go ahead and hop right to it and start singing. So the males will actually be the first ones to find the water, and they will start croaking. So a bullfrog in general, you guys know, they sound like a croak. They have like the Budweiser commercial from back in the day. The kids are probably thinking I'm crazy. They don't even know what that is. They will kind of sound like a burp. And that is apparently very attractive to the lady bullfrogs because that sends them hopping over, and they will find the burpiest male, I guess, the croakiest male, and they will kind of be attracted to that. But that's also going to tell other males to, hey, stay out of my territory. This is my space. I want all the ladies. If you come any closer, I'm going to try to fight you. And they do fight as well. And they will throw each other around by biting each other and tossing each other in the air. They will also body slam one another. And remember, this frog, they get big, real big. So imagine those big, strong frogs wrestling each other, tossing each other around, biting each other. These guys also have huge teeth. So a African bullfrog is one of the few type of frogs to have like big teeth, and they have 3 big spikes that are growing out of the bottom jaw, and it's only on the bottom jaw. And those are kind of like teeth. They're more like kind of bone, but they function like teeth, and they have like 3 big spikes so they can bite their rivals and kind of like toss them around or whatever. But that's also going to, hopefully give them space. They all have eventually their own little space. It could be all in the same pond. It could be all in the same river system, etc. They prefer kind of a quieter moving river if they do live in a river, by the way, or stream or something like that. Nothing like rushing around because that's not going to be pleasant for them to hang out in. But something still moving and still or slow moving, I should say. But anyway, so they're probably going to share the entire water system, but have their own little space after they've established a little bit of a territory. And also those females are going to look at them and be like, your voice sounds cool, and you are very, very strong because you can fight other males off. And that's going to help her to select mates. So she will go around picking the strongest mates, the deepest voice, I guess, Barry White of the frogs, and they will start to breed. And then what they will do, I know it's time for the next part, Frances. She's like, I don't want to hear this part. It's embarrassing. So then they will actually do what we call amplexus. So when frogs mate, if you will, they don't really mate all the way, if you know what I mean. They actually fertilize their eggs in the water. So there is no actual mating, if you will, going on. But the male will perform what we call amplexus, which is grabbing the female by the waist, and she will start to lay eggs into the water. They can have lots of them. Most frogs lay hundreds of eggs at a time, and these guys are no different. Some frogs actually do only lay a few at a time. It just kind of depends. But most frogs that are going to do everything this way, they will lay the eggs literally into the water, and the male simultaneously will fertilize the eggs, if you know what I mean, in the water. And if those eggs are fertilized, good thing. And they will actually hatch. So then they go their separate ways, by the way. Mom lays the eggs and then leaves. Dad will actually stay with the eggs, and they could have multiple mates. They could have multiple clutches of eggs that are his, right? And she's getting all wiggly again. He will actually stay right there in the same territory. And mom may stick around a little bit, but she's usually going to go about her business after she's laid the egg. She's done her part, and she's going to go away, and that's just what she does. And then if they're fertilized, they're going to either sink to the bottom or maybe stick to a few plants at the bottom of the water system that they've chosen. And then if those eggs are fertilized, they're going to hatch in 2 to 5 days. That is on average. So let's say 3 days. So as soon as they are laid, fertilized, 3 days later, baby frogs. And we all know baby frogs are actually tadpoles. So these guys have a larval stage, just like an insect, kind of, sort of. So they actually are called a larva, which is exactly what a insect, if they have a worm stage, is called too. Like a butterfly, right? Butterfly have a larval stage, which is called a caterpillar. But when they hatch out of the egg, they're going to be that little tadpole or larva. And then in a few days to a couple of weeks, maybe 3 weeks or so, they're going to start to grow legs. They're going to start to shrink their tail. Eventually, in a little while, maybe a few months, they're actually going to lose all their gills, which they have used to swim in the water. And they're going to actually change their entire digestive system and lose their entire tail completely. And then they look like a little tiny miniature frog, which is about the size of Frances's head. That is how big they are when they first turn into a little froglet, which is their first adult stage, right? They're not really an adult. They're not mature. They're not able to have babies yet, but they are an adult technically from a larva. So it's egg, larva, adult, and larva actually has a couple of stages, maybe 3 if you're being picky, but larvae go from tadpole to polywog, which is like the in-between, and then froglet or frog or adult. So as soon as they metamorphosize, is that a word? I think I made that up. As soon as they go through metamorphosis and they are a little frog, they're not going to be a mature breeding frog yet. That's going to take a few years. In fact, Frances, I don't think is even mature yet. I think these guys take a while to be mature, and it's something I need to learn and look up. But I know they need to be pretty sizable to be able to lay all those eggs. So when those eggs, when those babies turn into little froglets, that's usually going to be around the time when the dry season happens again. And guess what? Then they go all underground again. They're going to estivate, which is like their form of hibernation, right? They're going to estivate underground, wait out the dry season, put that slime bag back on their body, and wait it out for however long the duration of the dry season is. And then when the wet season comes again, they will pop back out of the ground and go find some water. And then they'll start the cycle all over again. But after a few years, it's going to take them a few years to become big enough to be able to be a mature breeding frog. And these guys live a long time, and they grow very slow for a frog as well. Now, you might be wondering what they eat. Well, that is also a really fun, I'm just going to jump right on my hand. That's also a really fun fact about most frogs is when they are tadpoles and polywogs underwater. Bye, Frances. Don't worry, I got her. So she's actually over, you guys can't see on most of our platforms, but Instagram can see she's over a padded table, so she's okay. I actually didn't even let her hit the table, but she tried to leap out of my hand. They do have very strong jumping back legs, like most frog legs, right? We'll talk about the differences between toads and frogs here in a little bit. But these guys, when they are babies, so just like any frog species, I believe, when they are babies, when they're in that larval stage, whether it be tadpole or polywog, those guys have an omnivore's diet. So their digestive system is totally different. They can actually eat algae, plants, and other animals like mosquito larvae, small bugs, small fish, things like that. They can eat pretty much anything that fits in their mouth. They can try to eat it, and that's going to help them to grow, and be able to make it until the dry season. Because guess what? If they do not grow up and hurry up and become a little frog, and that whole water system dries up, they're not going to make it. So they need to be a frog by the dry season. So they need to eat, grow, and be able to go back into estivation, right? So as a baby, they're going to be able to eat all kinds of stuff. But as an adult, these guys are carnivores, just like any frog. Frogs in general mostly are insectivores, but this type of frog, remember, they get really big. They're one of the largest frogs in the world. I think they're the third largest frog in the world, and I know they're the second largest in Africa. Yes, so I think they're the third largest. So if you think about it, the cane toad is a type of frog, which, by the way, all toads are frogs, but not all frogs are toads. So the cane toad is the biggest one, and the Goliath frog, which is in Africa, is also the second biggest. It's almost as big as the cane toad, and then these guys are actually the third largest in the world, I do believe. You can look it up and prove me wrong if you want to. There's lots of big frog species, but I know they're the second largest in Africa for sure. So anyway, bye, Francis. Francis is feisty today. I've got questions over there that I'm going to address in just a little bit. Now, one thing I do want to make sure I mention before I forget, and that's going to be you shouldn't handle frogs. I know I'm all over this video handling Francis, but I have rinsed my hands with bottled water before I started doing this. And if you're a professional herpetologist, zoologist, something like that, that is okay for you to do your job and handle reptiles, handle amphibians at your discretion. You know what you're doing. But the general public, we do not recommend you guys handle any frogs whatsoever with your bare hands. We really don't recommend you handling frogs at all, especially frogs you find in the wild, frogs in your backyard, frogs while you're camping, frogs in general. You want to leave them alone, and toads too, toads and frogs. And that's because we can actually harm them with our skin. We have oil, we have hand sanitizer, hairspray, all kinds of stuff on our lotion on our skin, and that can actually affect the skin of a frog because these guys have very, very absorbent skin that is very slimy, and that slimy skin helps to keep them moisturized, which is very important for a frog or toad. And also it can help them to breathe partially. These guys actually breathe partially with their skin, and they can go underwater and not have to take a traditional breath with their nose or lungs for a long time because they can exchange oxygen, gases, things like that through the water with their skin. They have a really neat system. But having that system is a trade-off because that means you have very sensitive skin, which is sensitive to everything you can think of, toxins in the water, trash, diseases, fungus, things like that, and humans touching you. So it's really important not to touch them. Also, frogs tend to pee on you whenever you pick them up in the wild, especially. She hasn't peed on me yet, but you never know. And in the wild, that's actually one of their weapons to be able to stay safe from their enemies. Because if you think about it, if an enemy grabs them and they pee all over the predator, hopefully that predator's going to say, I'm going to let you go. And the frog's going to get away because that was gross and it surprised them. But if you do that to the frog, you are like, oh my gosh, I love frogs. I'm going to go pick it up and kiss her. Mwah. And she pees all over you and you go, why? And then you drop her. And the next time a predatory bird or a raccoon or something picks them up, they're not going to get peed on because the pee is gone. And that's actually going to make the frog a lot more vulnerable to the next predator. So we want to make sure you're not doing that. That way, they have that weapon that they need to use. Some frogs also do bite, but most frogs don't really have the strongest or most impressive bites. These guys do. If they need to, they can bite, but they can also pee. So biting or peeing might be their weapon. Also, a lot of frogs can make you sick, not just getting peed on, that's super gross, but also their skin carries things like salmonella. So if you touch a frog and then you forget to wash your hands before eating a little snack or something like that, or if you kiss the frog and you get it on your lips, you can actually get salmonella and other diseases from frogs too. So it's really better to just leave them alone, admire from a distance, maybe take pictures. Maybe you can take pictures up close if they don't run away or hop away or jump away or swim away. But yeah, I also want to talk about the differences between toads and frogs because a lot of people do ask me, what's the difference? Well, it's kind of a spectrum, to be honest with you. But some toads have the the word toad in their name just because that's what they were named. That doesn't necessarily mean they're a true toad at all. So in general, toads tend to have bumps, but as you can see, she has bumps too. So there are exceptions to the rule, of course, as always in the animal kingdom. Toads generally have bumpier, drier skin. Toads typically prefer a more land-dwelling lifestyle, less water, more land. Toads tend to not be as good at hopping. Toads tend to be better at crawling and things like that. Toads sometimes have a rounder, flatter face. And then frogs are the opposite. Frogs a lot of times have a pointier, more triangular snout. Frogs a lot of times have smoother, certainly more wet or slimy skin. Frogs typically are better at hopping, swimming, and jumping, things like that. And they have longer legs. She's got pretty long legs for her round shape. Francis is on the move today, by the way, you guys. And frogs tend to be smoother, like I said before. And more aquatic lifestyle. I think I mentioned that already, but frogs always have a more aquatic lifestyle than a toad would in general. So those are a few of your choices, of your differences between frogs and toads. And but they're all in the same family, obviously. Frogs and toads are very closely related, just like turtles and tortoises are closely related. They're in the same family. And all toads are frogs, but not all frogs are toads, more specifically. Here's a good question. Can frogs and toads regenerate lost digits or limbs as they age? I do not believe they do. I know that this species doesn't really do that. I could be wrong. There might be other frog species or toad species that can regenerate. I do know the axolotl can regenerate literally any body part, including the tail, gills, brain. They can regenerate anything, a limb, very, very easily. But but I know that these type of frogs really can't do that. I've never seen a frog regenerate any type of body part. I do know that some other salamanders besides axolotls, I believe, can regenerate. But that's something to learn and look up, right? I'm always learning all the time. Good question. Hello, Nikki. This is a great question. Hello. Is it true that frogs give you warts? No, that is not true. Guess who gives you warts? Warts are typically a virus. So that typically comes from another human. There are all different types of warts, and that's all I'm going to say. But if you actually maybe shake hands with somebody that has a wart on their hand, you could potentially get that wart as well, or that disease. Not every time, but that's way more dangerous to get warts than it is to handle a frog. Frogs typically can give you like salmonella, bacteria, things like that, but not something like that, not warts. That is actually a myth, and that's because it looks like that frogs and toads have bumps on their skin, and they do have bumps on their skin, so it looks like they have warts, I should have said. They don't have warts, they just have bumpy skin. And the bumpy skin has a very simple purpose. It's actually to just look like a natural surface and a natural texture to be able to blend into stuff. Having the green coloration makes a lot of sense in nature as well to help blend in. But guess what? Her belly is white. Look at the belly. Oh my gosh, she is so cute. So her belly, or her ventral is what it's called, because it's like chin to belly, under her legs, everything, does not need to be camouflaged because these guys do not hang out upside down. They also are not a poisonous type of frog. There are a lot of frog species that are actually bright colored, like poison dart frogs or even fire-belly toads, which, by the way, fire-belly toads are actually frogs. That's another one that got a mixed up name. But those animals have a bright colored belly, and some frogs are bright colored all over the place to warn their enemies that they are either tasting really bad or they are straight up poison and you should not eat them. This type of frog, she is not straight up poison. They are not poisonous at all. They may have bacteria and salmonella, but this is actually an edible frog to not only humans in their native lands of Africa, but they also are eaten by quite a few animals in general. So having this textured back like they have, and the green coloration on their dorsal, which is their back and top, they have a very good chance of surviving by just hiding. So that is why some frogs have a bumpy texture and some toads have a bumpy texture. That's going to help them. That's going to help them to hide a little bit better and have camouflage. Good question. So I didn't talk too much about this, but Nikki's asking, why do the males care for the tadpoles instead of the female? I don't really know why. But the males of this species, the African bullfrog, also known as the pixie frog, is one of the few type of frogs where the males get extra large and the females stay a little bit smaller. Both males and females of the species get very large, but the males are actually the bigger ones because they stick around and protect the young. They have to be so big to be able to fend off predators and maybe even other males that want to kick them out of their territory. But they're such good dads that they will make sure that there's enough water. And how do they do that? They will actually dig underground. So they will, I'm gonna set her down for just a second because she's being so crazy. If they're hanging out in that water and it starts to dry up and the water goes away and sinks down into the soil, they'll actually dig and dig and dig and dig and dig and dig under until more water bubbles up. Or they might even be over here in like a puddle or a pond. And right, I've got a poor connection on Instagram. Sorry guys, I'm back. Yay. So they'll be like over here in a little puddle or pond. And then right next door might be another puddle or pond, but maybe he needs to dig a little canal or a little river in between the two puddles to make sure there's enough water. So he knows exactly what he's doing. And they have to be big, strong to be able to fend off predators. There's all sorts of predators that eat tadpoles and young frogs for sure. So I don't really know why. That's just the way they've evolved. Males certainly have become bigger and stronger. Francis is leaving the building. Let me tell you what. I think Francis is just hot little potato today. But anyway, so yes, the males do protect their babies. They even have big old teeth for biting, but males and females both have teeth. I hope that answers your question. I don't really know why. Yes. So Nikki also says, is this true? Those species of frogs can make a cocoon for themselves. Yes. During the dry season, they go into what we call estivation, which is like a hibernation for the dry season. Sorry, you guys, I'm missing a button on my shirt. and and they will actually go underground, bury themselves, and they'll create a slime bag, if you will, almost like a sleeping bag. And they'll create that out of their own snot or boogers and then kind of smear it all over themselves. And that will dry in like a little cocoon, like you mentioned, a bag over their body. It's like a plastic bag, but it's made out of snot. And then they'll just kind of hang out in that little bag and they'll retain the moisture they need to survive, just barely enough. But they'll go to sleep, shut down their body, and then when they wake up for the wet season, they will actually eat the slime bag off of their own body like snot boogers, gross, and then they will pop out of the ground and be able to find some water. But yes, that is very true. Cane toads are big for sure. Cane toads are the biggest of all the frog species / toad species, and the African bullfrog is the third largest species of frog. Yes, indeed. Oh, your green iguana is watching and bobbing their head. We have a female green iguana named Joanna. All right. So that was Frances the frog. I think she's just done. She is going crazy, a little jumping bean over here. But that's good. She's healthy, jumping around. They do jump around. But if you ever see some frogs in your own backyard, just appreciate that they're there. They actually eat a lot of bugs for us. That is definitely the best and most significant purpose of a frog in the natural environment, or a toad, or any amphibian, salamander, newt, whatever it might be, is eating lots of bugs. So most of those animals are insectivores or at least carnivores. These type of frogs actually also eat rodents for us too over in Africa, and that helps with the disease factor over in Africa too. So just because they might give you a disease by touching them, if you don't touch them, you'll be fine, which, by the way, I'm going to wash my hands real quick with some hand sanitizer before I proceed to the next animal. But they also help to lessen the disease factor across the planet by eating tons of insects like mosquitoes and flies and all sorts of things, roaches, and that helps us to stay healthy. Even the frogs right in our own backyard. Now, one thing you can also do to help frogs is actually not using pesticides. So pesticides are poisoning their food, which are the bugs, and also poisoning them in turn, because frogs are very sensitive on their skin, right? And they will actually absorb poison just by touching it and become very, very ill. Another really good thing that frogs and toads and amphibians do for us is being a what is it? An indicator species. Sorry, I had to have my brain shut off for a second. They are indicator species, which means that they are going to be some of the first types of animals on the planet to experience problems when there's significant change. So, for example, if we have temperature change across the planet, which we have going on, Some of these frogs and other amphibians are going to experience that temperature change in a significant way because maybe they're supposed to have cooler weather and now it's hotter. Maybe they're supposed to have hotter weather and now it's cooler. They're going to start becoming maybe breeding less, being out less. They're not going to eat as many bugs for us, things like that. But also, frogs and other amphibians, they become affected by diseases and fungus and all sorts of things that can kill them. And if we start seeing a die off in frog species, then we can know that there's probably a bad situation coming. So that's what we mean when we call an animal an indicator species. They're going to indicate that the earth is maybe not doing so well. And if they're doing well, then we can say, oh, that indicates that the earth is actually doing really well. So they can kind of show us the health of our planet, if you will, from disease, fungus problems, pollution for sure, climate change, etc. Water pollution, everything you can think of. I'm just reading some comments. Yeah, super gross, right? Gross. I'm so glad I'm not a frog. They're nasty. I love them, but no thank you. I don't want to eat snot. Okay. Hello, hello, Instagram. I'm just checking on comments over here. Hi. Hello. Awesome. Good to know. I'm so glad. Okay, if you guys have any questions about any of the animals, just let me know. And we're going to meet another African species, actually, right now. And it's not going to be an amphibian. It's going to be a reptile coming out next. One of my favorite type of reptiles. And that's a snake. Snakes are really awesome and also a great animal for the environment. So here he is. This is Prince. Prince is a ball python, Prince the python. And Prince is actually a pastave colored ball python. This is a special coloration only seen in human care. They're a mix between a Mojave and a pastel, and we call it a pastave, or I didn't name him. Somebody else came up with the name, right? And they are beautiful. He's one of my favorite ball pythons that we've ever had. And he's just really sweet, as most ball pythons are. So ball pythons are called ball pythons because they are an animal that will often be seen curled up in a ball. They'll just curl up in a ball for comfort, but that also is a great way to stay safe. They have a tiny head and quite a big body, if you will, kind of like Francis, actually. They have a pretty thick body compared to their head, and that is actually going to be very important for them because they can actually tuck their head underneath their body and protect themselves with their heavy body. And their body's very muscular as well and is covered in scales. Of course, they're a reptile, so they have scales instead of slimy mucus like a frog has. So these guys are a lot cleaner, number one, but also they're not going to be moist. They're actually dry. They're waterproof. They're the opposite of wet. They're not slimy at all, nothing like that. So these guys have shiny scales, and those scales are quite protective for them. And speaking of camouflage, like with the frog, he's got a great form of camouflage as well. Now, he may not be exactly the same color as a wild type ball python, which is more brown, very, very dark, but he does have the same type of pattern that you would see in the wild. And that is this beautiful camo pattern, which is going to help hide him very, very well. Now, this type of snake, the ball python or royal python is also another name for them. They typically live in Central Africa. And they're actually going to be seen living usually underground, underneath a termite mound, maybe underneath a fallen log, underneath a rock that's laid up on top of another rock, something that resembles a cave or a hole underground. That's what they actually prefer. That helps them to hide and stay safe, and that's going to keep them feeling comfortable in a little home, if you will. I mean, who can blame them for wanting shelter? But it's also going to help them hide from scary animals. Believe it or not, even though snakes are predators, they also have predators as well. So they're going to watch out for all sorts of predators across Africa. And this is not a big snake by any means. These guys do not get large for a python. They're actually one of the smaller type of pythons in the world. Now, I have seen a few of the female specimens of the ball pythons that have reached around 6 foot, but that is actually pretty rare. 5 foot is typically as big as they get. And males, like Prince, don't get nearly as big as that. So he may never get that large, although there are exceptions to every rule, right? Now, Prince is about 4.5 years old as well, just like Francis. And he's got a lot of growing to do, but not a ton. These guys are not a very big species. So because of that, they actually have quite a few enemies in the wild. There's a lot bigger predators like lions, leopards, hyenas, African wild dogs, eagles, hawks, all kinds of predators in Africa, crocodiles, anything you can think of that's a predator in Africa can probably eat a ball python, except for the tiny predators, right? and probably not Francis. But they do have a lot of predatory options, I guess, in the wild. So they need to be able to hide. So not only do they have a great pattern for hiding, they also tend to usually hide underground, especially during the duration of the day. These guys are much more nocturnal as a species than a diurnal or daytime species in general, but they really don't leave their home a whole lot unless they need to venture out for whatever reason, maybe breeding, maybe eating, maybe getting a drink, etc. They're really not going to leave home too often. They're kind of lazy animals when it comes to that, but they're also very shy animals, and that's why. But if they ever become, if they ever get attacked by a predator, they will typically retract their head underneath their body and use their big heavy coils on top of their head to be able to protect their head. And that's why they call them a ball python. They're not only just seen relaxing in a ball position or a curled up ball, they actually use that for defense as well. And they have very tiny heads compared to their big bodies. Now, believe it or not, this type of snake can actually eat something 5 times the size of their own head. And of course, you guys know that snakes do not eat salads. Snakes are carnivores. And typically with this species, they're going to be eating rodents. Sometimes they'll also eat birds, but this type of snake, the ball python, aka royal python, these guys really have a picky selection when it comes to eating. And they're typically going to only eat rodents. Now, they only eat warm-blooded animals. This type of snake really doesn't eat other reptiles, although I'm sure there's exceptions to everything. Some other types of snakes, like king snakes and colubrids like that, or even some of like cobras and things like that, those guys are reptile eaters and eat reptiles often. These guys really don't do that. Now, one reason that they kind of prefer warm-blooded animals is because of how they hunt. Now, all snakes, let's talk about their senses. All snakes have ever open eyes, but their eyes are not great. They really don't see any color. They see kind of blurry, and it's more based on movement and things like that. It's not really super sharp, and they don't really rely too much on their eyesight. Also, they're a nighttime animal. They don't really need to see very well because they've got other senses to make up for that. Speaking of bad senses, hearing is their worst sense by far. We don't really know if they hear at all. We don't really think so. They tend to feel vibrations instead, and that is definitely going to be more sensitive than their hearing. They don't have any external ears whatsoever, not even a tympanum like a frog has. Frogs have a kind of a disc like a tympanum, which is a waterproof ear system. Some frogs don't even have any ears, but they still hear very well. These guys have no ears, and there's really no evidence to know whether they hear or not. We don't really think that they use their hearing at all. But they do feel vibrations, and they can feel touch, and they can certainly feel loud sounds or stomping feet or something like that. But what they are really good at, so not hearing and not seeing they can do, but not well. So what are they good at? They're good at smelling. These guys have an amazing sense of smell, like any snake. They have a forked tongue, which they actually smell with. They don't smell with their nose at all. They actually breathe with their nose. Nostrils just like us, and they can take breaths. But they only breathe with one lung, by the way. One of their lungs is residual and is just very, very tiny. And the other lung is huge and widespread throughout their body cavity. And that's what actually breathes. And that's how they're going to breathe, is with their nostrils. So that's how they breathe, but that's not how they smell. But smell is their best sense. And they smell with their tongue instead. These guys have a forked tongue, which is very slender, is what I'm trying to say. They're very slender. And the tongue is easily comes out and easily goes back into their mouth effortlessly by the snake. And that's actually going to tell them quite a bit of information about their environment. They smell by picking up scent particles on their tongue. Tongue goes back into their mouth, and they have a special pocket on the roof of their mouth called a Jacobson's organ, or ventral nasal organ, and that's going to actually tell them direct information straight to the brain about those smells that they've experienced on their tongue. And that's how they smell. Very different than how we smell, right? Very cool. And that is how they're going to navigate the world around them and also find their prey. But they also have another way to find prey, which is what I'm trying to get at, and that is by heat sensing pits, also known as facial pits, also known as labial pits. And they have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 little holes on each side of their face on their upper lip. So 12 total. And that's actually going to sense body heat of prey or predator sometimes. I'm sure he's sensing my body heat, but I'm way too big for him to eat. And I also don't smell like a rodent, and these guys really prefer rodents. But that is a great way to find prey or predator, I guess, or just the world, by sensing heat and that will tell their brain kind of like a picture in their head, almost like Predator, the movie Predator. They can sense that body heat of other animals. Now, they're not a warm-blooded animal at all. So they really don't eat other snakes. They really don't eat lizards, things like that. And ball pythons, if you know much about them, they're very picky eating snakes anyway. So they really kind of are set in their ways as far as what they eat. What else? I think I covered all their senses. Ball pythons are extremely popular pets. To me, they're not the best first snake, but they're probably the best second snake for somebody to have as a pet. I think they're very gentle and wonderful for handling. That's not what the problem is. The problem is they're picky eaters, and sometimes they do have health issues, and sometimes they're inbred and have some other things too because there's so many of them in human care. So that is really where their problems lie. It's not their fault. They're actually wonderful animals, but I highly recommend like a corn snake or something like that for your first snake because those guys end up being a little bit easier to care for, less health issues, easier to feed, and things like that. So to each his own, but that's just my opinion. Also, ball pythons are not my favorite because they're a little bit, I don't know, they're just a little bit boring. uh, again, that's a matter of opinion. I love Prince, don't get me wrong, but in general, they're not really my favorite. I am more of a colubrid person. Let's see what questions you guys have. You're talking about your pets at home. Oh my gosh, yes. You thought it was an African rock python, another African python species, but no, it's just a ball python. We don't have any large python species. The largest snake I actually have here at Once in a Wild is going to be our Colombian boa constrictor, David Boa, and David Boa is only like 5 years old, so he's only 5.5 feet long at this point. Maybe he's 4.5 years old. He's probably the same age as Prince. Maybe Prince is 5 and David is 4.5. I'm gonna look back at their birthdays and find out soon. But they're around that age. They're both pretty young. Prince is around 4 or 5, and David is around 4 or 5 as well. David is actually a Colombian boa constrictor, though, and he will get pretty big, but not the biggest ever. Those guys, of course, as a male, are not going to get as big. Yes, monitor lizards in Africa do eat all sorts of animals, pretty much anything that they can catch, but they certainly do eat ball pythons for sure. And a lot of other snakes eat other snakes for sure. You guys, a lot of people don't care for snakes, and that is okay. I don't expect everybody to like reptiles and snakes, but snakes are my favorite animals in general because they are so misunderstood. I absolutely love caring for snakes in general. They're very quiet. They don't eat every day. In fact, this type of snake in the wild will eat about once or every other month, once a month or every other month. Maybe even every 6 months with no problems, and they can go a full year without very many consequences as well. They really don't have to eat very often. In human care, we like to offer them food every other week at this age. When they're babies, we offer them food every week. But as they get older, they don't need as much food, and they won't eat it. They just will flat out refuse. But snakes are very easy to take care of, in my opinion, as long as you give them all the things that they need. They don't really complain much. They don't go to the bathroom very often. They're just fantastic. And I love how they are to handle. Handling snakes is very, very easy, at least in my opinion. And they don't often go to the bathroom on you, which is a bonus. But some snakes do go to the bathroom on you, but usually ball pythons don't. Here's a great question from Nikki again. Ball pythons are so slow and their prey is fast in the wild. So how do they manage to survive? Great question. Now, keep in mind the ones in the wild have been kind of, through natural selection, the ones that are better at hunting are probably going to be the ones that survive and carry on their genes and things like that and have more babies and thus forth. The ones in human care are very spoiled. They get hand fed. A lot of them have special coloration, which comes with maybe special challenges upstairs, if you know what I mean. So it really just kind of depends. But in the wild, they're going to be exactly how they're supposed to be for surviving in the wild, right? But these guys are what we call ambush predators. So just like the frog, actually, both of those animals will sit still and wait for their food to come near them. And remember, they don't have to eat every day, not even close, not even once a month if they don't want to. What they're going to kind of do is hang out, maybe in their burrow, maybe just outside their burrow, maybe they stick their head outside of the hole of their cave or burrow and just kind of wait for rats and mice and maybe a bird to approach a little bit closer. And that's when they're going to strike really, really fast. They're going to reach out and grab their food very quickly and not going to hesitate, most likely in the wild, because they don't know when they're going to get their next meal. In human care, they might get their next meal tomorrow. May not be that big of a deal to skip a meal here and there. But in the wild, they're probably not going to do that. If an animal, especially a rat or a mouse, comes close enough, They're going to sense it with their heat sensing pits, right? They're also going to use their sense of smell and with the tongue, and they're going to sense that animal pretty fast. And they're going to reach out and grab it by striking, holding on with their mouth as hard as they can, and simultaneously wrapping around that prey and squeezing. All that's going to happen in the blink of an eye. Those of you that have snakes at home, that have ball pythons, you know how fast that can happen. They coil around that animal immediately, and they don't want it to get away. And their teeth are there. They actually have about 150 teeth in their mouth, give or take. And these guys do replace their teeth as they grow. They're gonna lose teeth and grow them back. Unlimited regenerating teeth, which is pretty awesome. Most reptiles are like that. Crocodiles are like that, another animal. Lizards. But these guys will hold onto their food with the teeth, and their teeth are kind of curved backwards, and they're needle thin, but there's like 150 of them. On the top, they actually have 2 rows of teeth on either side, and on the bottom, they just have a single row, just like you would expect. And they're going to hold on, squeeze for about 5 minutes, really, really hard with their heavy bodies, their big muscles. This is all the constrictors, by the way, the pythons, boas, all those guys. They're going to wrap around. And then other snakes too oftentimes will use constriction a little bit, but these guys are really good at it. And then when that animal has passed away, they can swallow it whole. And these guys can eat something 5 times the size of their head. So it's really about hiding, staying still, and ambushing your prey rather than slithering after them actively and hunting actively. They're not really an active hunter. They can come out and slither around sometimes, but in the wild, they don't really do that much because they're a little bit more shy. They're worried about predators and things. They're usually just going to stay at home, wait for food to come to the front door. If they're hungry enough, they'll grab it, wrap around, wait for it to pass away, swallow it whole, and then they can go another month easily without eating again, or even longer. Pretty cool, huh? I hope that answers your question. Yeah, they're not a fast animal at all. These guys are not fast except for when it comes to their striking speed. Then they're fast. Yeah, so here's a good question. A lot of animals in the wild have evolved to look similar to sorry, Prince. I surprised Prince because he can't hear me. And I tapped his little nose on accident. He got startled. So a lot of animals in the wild have evolved to look similar to snakes, like the blue-tongued skink, for example. Why is that? Well, snakes are predators, and a lot of animals in the wild, and a lot of people in general too, we're a little bit afraid of snakes sometimes. Not me, but humans. So animals in the wild instinctively know that this is an animal that might eat them. So by looking like a snake, if you're a lizard, that's actually going to help you to avoid predators. So a blue-tongued skink is a type of lizard that is very snake-like in appearance. They have really tiny legs. They have a long, slender, smooth, scaly body that looks like a snake. And they specifically mimic some of the Australian venomous snakes, like death adders and some similar animals, maybe some of the vipers, things like that. Death adders are actually not vipers, they're elapids, but they look like a viper. They have a big triangular head. So that whole image looking like a snake, especially from a distance to a predator of theirs, is going to be like, I don't know if I should go ahead and eat that animal. It might be a venomous snake. It might be a snake in general, so I'm going to avoid it because those guys tend to be dangerous in the wild. So by looking like a snake, some animals might avoid conflict. They might avoid predators, etc. So it makes a lot of sense. Very, very good. There's even some caterpillars that look like snakes to avoid like birds and things eating them. All right, Prince, you did a great job. Prince is actually going to be our animal tomorrow during my Thursday class. So each and every Thursday, while school is still in session, I actually teach at a homeschool group. And we do 2 classes each and every Thursday. And Prince is going to be the featured animal tomorrow. So he's going to have to work again. What a life. But he is a great animal ambassador. Snakes a lot of times are not everybody's cup of tea, and we understand that, but we want to make sure you guys respect snakes. If you see one in the wild, if you see one on vacation, if you see one anywhere, we want to make sure and leave them alone, and they'll leave you alone. Please don't go out and handle snakes in the wild because not every snake is appropriate for handling. Some snakes are venomous, and some snakes do bite, and some snakes may hurt you or harm you. But all snakes are important, even the venomous kind. I actually absolutely love them, like rattlesnakes and copperheads and things like that. Gorgeous animals. We want to leave them alone to do their job, and their job is to eat a lot of rodents and prey animals in general and help keep the populations of those animals lower and help us to have less disease in the world. Plus, it was their home first, and they deserve to be left alone and respected. So the best thing you can do if you see a snake near you, step away, maybe take a little picture and get out of there. And you can tell everybody about it. but please don't harm them. If you have a snake in your backyard and you don't want it there anymore, please call for a professional to help you humanely move the snake into an appropriate area. Or you can even do something as simple as playing a little bit of loud music, or getting the garden hose and spray a little spritz near the snake. They'll usually leave and usually never come back. They don't want anything to do with humans, so they're afraid of us. Yes, unless you're a herper like Brian. Herpers are okay to handle snakes in the wild because they know what they're doing. People that study animals and whatnot, but you know which snakes to handle with your bare hands and which not to. We want to make sure that those kids and adults out there that don't know what they're doing, make sure they stay safe and make sure they don't harm any animals in the wild. But you were right. Okay, so thank you, Prince. You did a fantastic job. Prince is beautiful. Did you guys know that snakes never blink because they have a spectacle scale over their eye, which protects their eye? And they don't need to blink because that is enough for them to have a protected eyeball. And they can actually even go underwater and look around underwater with their built-in goggles, which is the spectacle scale I just described. And they can even smell underwater by sticking their tongue out and gathering scent particles because they don't have to breathe in to smell. Okay, Prince, you did a great job. Everybody on Instagram, say bye to Prince. And we'll see him next time, of course. He's a regular here on the show. Prince, the ball python, a pestave ball python. One of the many type of morphs that you can actually find in human care. All right, so for the last animal, I'm just going to have to step away briefly to go get our final animal, which happens to be a type of bird. She is in the next room, so I'm going to go gather her really quick, and I'll be right back. And we're back, and it's Sunny the cockatiel. Say hi, Sunny. Sunny is a Lutino cockatiel, which is a special coloration that is only seen in human care. These guys are typically gray and white with a yellow head and orange cheeks. Sunny has the orange cheeks and an entirely yellow body instead of a gray body. But it's just a special type of coloration that you'll see in human care. I think we still have a little bit too bright of a light, so I'm just going to turn this light off really quick. Sunny's really excited to be here, you guys. Step up. Step up. There you go. And hopefully you can see her a little bit better, even though our lighting is more dim. I want you to be able to see the animal, of course. So Sunny is a cockatiel. These guys, of course, are pretty popular pet birds, and I think they're probably the best type of pet bird. Them and budgies are my favorite to recommend for the right family, but pet birds are not for everybody by any means. Just like we talked about with the pet rabbits, you want to make sure and do a ton of research and talk to a lot of people that have pet birds before you adopt a pet bird. But cockatiels are not a very loud type of bird. They tend to have a much weaker beak, so they can't bite as hard, and they tend to be very social with their owners as soon as they get to know you, and especially a hand-raised cockatiel like Sunny. They tend to be very, very friendly and outgoing, and they want to sit with you. I don't know what Sunny is looking at, but it's been a little bit since she's been in the studio, and we do have our tortoises in here tonight, our baby tortoises that were on the show last time. A couple weeks ago, we had them on. So our baby red-footed tortoise enclosure is in here, which is probably what Sunny is looking at. So sometimes birds are too smart for their own good, and also birds like this are actually prey animals. So a lot of times they get a little bit nervous in new situations. Would you like a treat? I bet you would like a little bit of millet. What's a minute? Yum! So a lot of times with bird training, you want to work through their natural instinct of being a little bit fearful. And if you can get them eating and focusing on something else, they tend to forget about their fears. That's kind of a life lesson for all of us, right? But Sunny is a cockatiel. Cockatiels are actually native in the wild to Australia, and they are a direct miniature version of a cockatoo. Did you know that? So cockatiels and cockatoos, both of them, are in the parrot family. And this is no different. This is actually a type of tiny parrot, or technically parakeet. Did you know that there's many species of parakeet, not just one? The budgie or budgerigar is another Australian breed or species, not really a breed, a species of parrot or parakeet, and they actually are the most well known of all the parakeet species. But that's just one type of parakeet. It's just a tiny parrot, technically. So, how can we tell that Sunny here is a parrot? Well, Sunny has a curved beak, which is looking like a wrench, kind of like a tool for cracking open seeds and nuts. You saw how easy it was for Sunny to actually eat the millet seed. Now, this type of parrot doesn't have a very strong bite, and even smaller parrots like budgies have a stronger bite than cockatiels. But in general, a parrot has a very strong bite designed for crunching open hard food like seeds and nuts. And that is a feature of all parrot species. So like the biggest macaws and cockatoos out there, they have huge beaks that look like a wrench, and they can easily crunch a seed, no problem, and eat it up. That's a feature of all parrots, though, is their curved beak. Can you see Sunny's beak? Sunny, show your beautiful beak. Sunny's looking awfully nervous today. We have to get used to our surroundings again. Also, a parrot also has kind of an upright, standing up stance when they are perched in a tree or just perched to sleep or wherever, sitting on my hand. They actually have kind of like an appearance of sitting up straight. That's going to be another feature of all parrots. And lastly, it's going to be their feet. So parrot species of all types, whether they be tiny ones like this or giant ones like the macaws, which are the largest types of parrots, the largest being the hyacinth macaw. Those guys all have what we call zygodactyl foot placement. That's really fun to say. Zygodactyl means 2 toes in the front and 2 toes in the back. As you can see, Sunny has 2 toes in the front. And believe me, there are 2 toes in the back facing the other way. A lot of birds actually have a little bit different of a toe placement, and that's going to be 3 toes in the front and 1 in the back. But most birds do have 4 toes with a few exceptions. Now, that is a feature of every parrot. Like I said, the beak, the sitting up straight thing, and also the zygodactyl toe or foot placement. Now, the reason that they have that silly toe placement is to actually be able to use their feet like hands. They can easily have like a more even grip, so they can use their foot to actually pick up a piece of food and bring it to their mouth and eat it like that, like a little hand. They can actually climb as well very easily with their zygodactyl toes. And you've probably seen a parrot climb a tree, a branch, or even their cage to get from here to there. They'll actually use their beak and 2 feet to climb around like little monkeys. So that's a feature of all parrots, and that's why they have that. Another thing that they can do is have a nice, even, strong grip in a tree if the wind happens to blow pretty hard. A lot of parrot species are from like the jungle, for example, for the Amazon. So like Amazon parrots and macaws and a lot of those parrots, they need to have a very strong grip and also climbing ability, like I mentioned, to get around in the jungle. A lot of those jungle habitats are very, very dense with lots of plants around them in the trees. They need to be able to kind of climb and navigate all over the place. But regardless of where they're from, every parrot species has those 3 features. The beak that I described, the toes that I described, and just sitting up straight when they're at rest. Now, you might be thinking that's a little bit of a weird feature. Doesn't every bird sit up straight? The answer is no. Most birds actually sit kind of more forward facing, and parrots have like a little flat face because of their beak structure and shape. So they appear to have like a smaller head and sitting up straight like that. For example, a toucan doesn't just have a very, very long beak compared to a parrot. They actually sit kind of more forward facing and down hunched. Grackles and pigeons and animals like that have much more kind of downward position when they're just at rest. Now, one thing that cockatiels like Sunny and cockatoos, their close cousin, the bigger variety, have is going to be their crest. And no other parrot types have the crest. Now, there are some, and that's on top of their head, looks like a mohawk. There are some other birds that have a crest. For example, a woodpecker has a crest, of course, that they can raise or lower. And even some like owl species have ear tuft feathers, which will stick up or lower in order to give them a little bit of expression. But as far as all the parrots, only the cockatiels and cockatoos actually have this beautiful crest on top of their head. And that is actually for self-expression. Like I was mentioning with the owl, they can express themselves, talk to each other with their feathers. Every bird talks with their feathers. Every bird also talks with their voice, of course. Come here. You want to come to my shoulder? Would that make you feel better about the situation? Maybe we'll just do that instead. Aw, sweet little thing. Sunny's actually one of my very favorite of all of our animals. So we will have patience with our sweet little Sunny, that she can get used to her surroundings, because it's been a minute since she's been in the studio and things have changed. A lot of times we'll add things in here for storage, or animals live in here temporarily. So sometimes our animals are like, what the heck happened? And that is something that birds do a lot, is they're a little bit cautious and not as trusting of new situations. But I'm sure she'll get used to it. But the crest is something that's only seen on cockatoos and cockatiel in the parrot family, which I find so interesting. Now, through genetic research, we've been able to discover that cockatiels like this are actually directly related to cockatoos. They're basically like miniature cockatoos. But in my opinion, cockatoos are one of the worst type of pet birds of all the choices of pet birds, and cockatiels are actually the best one, in my opinion. So it's kind of funny how different they are personality-wise, even though they're so genetically similar. Oh, yes. I think, as far as, the parrots, the cockatiel is actually the best choice. Maybe a budgie as well, but I think cockatiels are the sweetest. But I think this animal actually makes a better pet than a parrot of any kind, and that is a duck. We have ducks here at Once in a Wild. We actually have 5 ducks. 3 are wood ducks and 2 are Pekin ducks, and I think any of the domestic variety of duck breeds are actually very, very good pets. Ducks and chickens are probably my favorite of all the pet birds to recommend. In fact, speaking of playlist videos, we were talking about the rabbit. Remember, we were talking about pet rabbits and things like that at the beginning of this video. I want to make sure and talk about pet rabbits because Easter is coming up and a lot of people do impulse buy pets for Easter, whether they be ducks, chickens, rabbits, etc. Oh, Sunny's going to give us a little stretch. Look at the stretch. So cute, Sunny. You're beautiful. But rabbits are the most commonly impulse bought Easter animal for sure. So you want to go back to our playlists and check out some of the animal care videos on our playlist on YouTube and check out the rabbit video that talks all about rabbit care. And there's also another one all about pet bird care as well. And I do mention that I much prefer seeing people have chickens or ducks than parrots, but I think that chickens and ducks make great pets. Do I know birds are reptiles? Yep. Do we want to go off on that tangent? So I guess we have had 2 reptiles on the channel today and 1 amphibian. Yes, birds are very closely related to reptiles and dinosaurs too. Now you can see her beautiful feathers. Feathers are a feature of birds that no other animal has currently. We know that some dinosaurs had feathers. Maybe all dinosaurs had feathers. Who knows? I have a feeling that there's some dinosaurs that probably didn't have feathers, but what do I know? Maybe different time periods throughout evolution. A lot of them did, and we do have proof of that nowadays. But birds currently, as far as all the living animals currently, they're the only ones to have feathers. And birds use their feathers for communication, like we mentioned with the crest, or just general using their feathers to fluff and talk to each other. Peacock is a great example. All sorts of birds communicate with their feathers fluffed, slicked, feathers out, whatever. They understand their language a lot better than us, by the way. But birds also use their feathers for insulation, of course, to stay warm, stay cool. Ducks are a great example of that. Ducks are actually fully insulated to handle heat or cold. And of course, ducks are waterproof because they have down feathers underneath, slick feathers on top, and they even have an oil gland from their hind end, which these guys have as well. They have a little oil gland to keep their feathers clean. And it's a preening gland at the base of their tail. And that helps a duck to actually be waterproof and also helps these guys to clean themselves when they preen and take care of their feathers. So they have the feathers for all of that. Oh my gosh, she just yawned. And they also have feathers for flight as well. They happen to be a flying bird, which Sunny is a flying bird. As you can see, she has all her wing primary feathers. And of course, as a species, they rely on flight to stay safe, to get around, I should say. They navigate mostly with their eyesight and their hearing. So parrots like this one have amazing vision. Most birds have amazing vision, but these type of birds that fly, and especially small birds, they really need their eyesight to be able to get around trees, to navigate around. But they do fly, right? So their feathers are going to be another, that's another function of their feathers. That's what I'm trying to say. Speaking of feathers, looks like Sunny is preening herself right now. She is taking care of her feathers. Oh my goodness, Sunny, you're absolutely adorable. Let's have another stretch, shall we? A little wing stretch. Sunny is so cute. How could you not love this cute little bird? I just love her so much. I hope you guys can see her. So these cockatiels are amazing little creatures. So cockatiels are a type of parrot that can mimic, but typically females like Sunny here, we are pretty sure that Sunny's a girl. Sunny is still pretty young, about a year old, but not showing any signs of being a male. So typically by now, she would have started acting totally different, singing a lot, talking to reflections, lots of whistling, lots of everything. Sunny's a very quiet cockatiel, which is fantastic. Makes her one of my favorites. There's another big stretch. We're just stretching all over the place today. Oh my gosh, she must be getting tired. It is getting close to a diurnal species like this bedtime because she's a daytime species. She's getting ready to go to sleep. We haven't had her dinner yet, though. It's time for dinner soon. Dinner and then sleep time. She's such a good bird. But no signs of really being a male. I think female. That's my best instinct. Although with this coloration, the lutino or yellow coloration like this, it is very hard to tell externally if they're boys or girls. When they are the wild type, it's very easy to tell when they're the gray with the yellow head and all that, because males are always brighter colored than females overall. But my instincts tell me, girl, you gonna eat my nose ring? You gonna eat it? You gonna eat my earring? They love shiny things. But she is very quiet for a cockatiel. She's very, very chill. Not a whole lot of sassiness. She also, I don't know. It's just hard to describe unless you know them very well. But our male cockatiel is very typical male. He sings all day. He is very flirty with the other cockatiels that we have. We have two others. Oh, she's gonna go potty on me. I just know it. That's okay. It's part of what we do here. And that is okay. She's fine. She can potty on me. But did you know that birds actually go to the bathroom a whole lot because they need to stay lightweight in order to be able to fly away at a moment's notice? A bird does not have a traditional bladder, and they actually have a lot less internal organs than other animals because they need to stay nice and lightweight to be able to fly. Absolutely. It's a lot more to flight than just like, oh, I'm going to take off and flap my wing. They need to be lightweight. They need to not have as much water weight. They need to have pneumatic bones, which are very lightweight and also strong at the same time. The feathers, of course, are very important. They have to have a special breathing system, which is not really with their lungs. They do have lungs, but their lungs are more like a filter, like a liver almost, for their breathing system. They actually breathe more with an air sac system, which is throughout their internal body cavity, which works more like a bellows and recycles air all the time as they breathe and makes their body cooler so they don't overheat when they're flying, and also helps them to efficiently breathe while they fly in order to function whatsoever while flapping their wings up in the sky. And that also helps them, especially for birds that fly really high up, to not, have a lack of oxygen and things like that when they're up there flying. So there's a lot more to it than you might think. But that's partially why birds actually go potty a lot, is because they're trying to lighten up before they fly off. So they're just going to go to the bathroom as much as they can. Very, very good. Time for treats. So by the way, I'm feeding her millet seed, which is a cockatiel's favorite food, typically. And it's not something that she gets all the time, just for treats and training. But that helps her to really have high value to want to hang out with me. I'm already her favorite person, but she'll hang out with anybody really for millet. That's a very, very high value food. And since we don't feed it to her every day, she doesn't see it unless we're doing fun things like this or new things and trying to get her used to the scary studio again and things like that. Oh, yes, this is a great point as well. Back to reptile. A lot of people think that reptiles are not smart, but that's not true. Iguanas and monitors and tegus are smart, and most reptiles are smarter than people think. Yes, I even think snakes are smarter than people think. Tortoises too. A lot of animals, just because they act differently than we think about a smart animal acting. I think we think about primates. We think about birds, I think. I think most people understand that birds are pretty smart. People think owls are smart, but they're not. But anyway, I think animals like primates, I think animals like dogs that we kind of see and we're like, oh yeah, those are smart because they act like this or whatever. We kind of think, oh, we know everything. But just because animals act differently doesn't mean that they're dumb, right? I don't think really any animal is dumb. I think some animals are more primitive and maybe they're just a little bit simpler than others. But for sure, tegus, monitors, and iguanas and all those guys are very, very intelligent. It's proven. So you are right. Yes, this is another good point. Thank you for all the amazing points, Brian. People should never feed wild birds, especially swans, ducks, geese, bread, because it messes up their stomach. It can actually give them all sorts of different developmental issues. It can fill them up so quickly because bread is so absorbent and has if it blows up in their in their belly, basically. Birds actually have very sensitive digestive systems too because they're very specialized. But when you feed a duck bread, they're gonna fill up really fast, and then they're actually not gonna have any nutrients that benefit their body at all from that bread. That bread is not appropriate for them. And since they're so full, they'll be like, well, I don't have to eat all day. I'm full. And they won't actually eat any of the vegetation or the insects that they need or the fish that they need or anything, and they will not get any nutrients they need. They can actually have poorly developed wings. They can look like heart shaped, like angel wings, which sounds cute, but it's not. It's actually a deformity that they can get. They can get not enough calcium in their system, just like reptiles, they need calcium, etc. So it's really important not to feed ducks bread. It's really bad for them. Also, ducks might favor bread in the long run and be like, "Oh, I just want bread and I don't want anything else that I'm supposed to eat because this bread is basically cake to me or candy, treats." So they're like, "Oh, I'm just going to wait for that. If this human over here that comes to the park is going to feed me nothing but bread, then I'm just going to eat that." And those ducks are not going to live very long. They're not going to do well. They're going to have deformities. A lot of ducks that are fed a lot of bread can't fly anymore and they can't get away from predators. It's really bad. There's a lot of issues with that. So the best thing to feed ducks in your park or in the wild, you can feed them peas. You could take some frozen peas and thaw them out a little bit in some water and throw the peas for them. They love that. Those are really good for them. You can also use bird seed. You can also use chicken feed. That's probably one of the best things to feed them. Chicken feed can fill them up pretty fast, but once they're full, they just won't eat anymore. So things like that. But even bird seed isn't the best either, but it's better than bread. So bird seed, veggies are good. Oh my gosh, Sunny. Any type of, what is she doing? Any type of vegetable is actually the best choice. You can do peas and carrots. You can do frozen peas by themselves. You can do collard greens, mustard greens, and kale are always really good food. But good old duck or chicken feed is really good too, right? Because that's actually made for them. You want to get some high quality stuff, and it's not expensive. So that all that stuff is probably the same amount as bread. It's not going to really, break the bank or anything like that. And that's a much, much better choice. It's actually going to give them nutrients. The nutrients. That's going to give them, a healthy meal as opposed to filling them up with a bunch of junk, and then they do not get the nutrients they need. Very, very good point. Yes, it's always also best to do research in advance of getting an exotic pet or any pet. I don't think everybody should have a dog or a cat, frankly. If you get a dog or a cat on impulse and don't do any research, you're probably going to have problems. But especially for an exotic pet of any kind, a reptile, a bird, a rabbit, for crying out loud, whatever it may be, you want to make sure, number one, that you do a lot of research, talk to people that know what they're doing, make sure you're giving them the best setup and best life that you possibly can. And that doesn't always mean expensive. Whenever I say stuff like that, people are like, "Oh my gosh, it's going to be so much money." A lot of times when you set them up correctly, you're actually spending a lot less money in the long run because they're going to be healthier. Honestly, the rabbit that we have, Sandor, he's not expensive at all, but we take good care of him. And the last thing you want to do as well, maybe not the last, but it's one of the most important things, is going to be having a good vet. Not every vet can see a rabbit. A lot of vets will claim that they can see rabbits and guinea pigs and rats and all sorts of things because they're common, but a lot of them really don't know what they're doing. And I don't mean to be mean or rude. I'm not trying to be rude, but you 100% need to have an experienced vet in the exact animal that you have, or something at least pretty close. With us, we're a little bit strange because we do have a lot of strange animals and not everybody has, but most of your pet animal, even birds, you're going to be able to find a vet that actually does see cockatiels and actually does see XYZ. Birds are probably the most important to have a very experienced and very skilled vet because birds are extremely, I repeat, extremely, one more time, extremely fragile. So birds can go to the vet and not come home with you, frankly, because some vets don't know what they're doing. And some vet staff aren't careful with the birds. Birds can die from breathing in the wrong chemicals in the room. They can die from mishandling. They can catch diseases that other animals don't catch as often. Birds are another indicator species on the planet. They actually can breathe in and become very, very sick from all sorts of airborne problems, toxins, diseases, things like that. Have you ever heard of a canary in a coal mine? That's exactly what that means. They would take a canary to a coal mine when they were working back in the old days, and if the canary started freaking out or died, they would know they needed to get out of there because fumes are rising from the earth and out of the mine, right? And they need to get out of there or else they're going to become engulfed with fumes, frankly. So anyway, I hate to be so passionate about this, but it's extremely important if you're going to get any sort of exotic animal, like we were saying, especially birds, in my opinion, reptiles too. A lot of people think they know what they're doing with reptiles, but they don't. It's very important that your vet is honest with you, especially in an emergency situation. You want to make sure that they have definitely handled that type of animal before. They have definitely had good success with that type of animal before, and don't be afraid to ask for references or ask for a second opinion if you can. That's never a bad thing. I highly recommend with any animal, even cats or dogs, horses, whatever, get a second opinion. If you feel like, I'm not really sure about this, no vet is going to be angry at you for getting a second opinion. And if they are, that's ridiculous. That's just the way it is. So be very picky about that. And if you're ever going to get any sort of exotic animal, make sure just do it the right way. If you ever need help with any of this stuff, that's what we're here for. Once in a Wild is here for you. If you ever need advice, help, we've got a lot of helpful tips on our social media. We've got so many live stream videos talking about all this stuff. We've got a video about birds. We've got a video about pets in general not being toys and how you can respect them better. Pets are not for children only. They need to be either for the entire family or for adults, and that is how I feel. We have a few discussions about that. We have a full video on rabbits. Check that out as well. It is Easter time, and a lot of people think they want a rabbit for Easter, but it should not be bought that way. Now, if you're serious about adopting a rabbit, the best thing you can do is adopt, don't shop. There's a lot of rabbits that end up homeless. Find your local rabbit rescue and go from there. And if you want to support a reputable breeder, that's another responsible thing you can do. That's what we did with our rabbit Sandor because we wanted a specific breed for our once in a wild zoo. But the general public, I recommend just adopting from a rescue or your animal shelter. And you want to always house them correctly, feed them correctly, and have a great vet on hand to be able to visit in case of an emergency or in case you just need their annual exam, things like that. Very important. One of our passions here at Once in a Wild, we don't just teach about wildlife and teach you about conservation, which is also one of our goals and very important, but we also want to make sure that you guys know how to take care of your pets at home as well. Or maybe just don't get a pet if you are not ready for one, right? Okay. Yes, a big one. Oh my gosh. So we have an iguana here at Once in a Wild named Joanna. You guys probably know her already. But Brian is saying iguanas are one animal that is so misunderstood. Iguanas people buy on impulse, and they bite can be bad when bigger. Yes, they're already sometimes bad as babies. Iguanas are one bad impulse buy because they can damage a large male in mating season. So they can do damage. Yes. So absolutely. I think iguanas are one of the worst pets for the general public. If you know what you're doing with iguanas, that's fine. We have an iguana. She's a great education animal because she is great as a teaching opportunity. And they're amazing animals. They have so many fun facts about them, and I love them. I think they have one of the coolest personalities, usually. But iguanas in general, not easy to care for, not easy to feed for most people. They tend to be aggressive. They tend to be territorial. They're huge, so it's hard to provide the right enclosure for them. They really need to be kept outside, which not everybody can do, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And they do have health issues sometimes. Our iguana is very healthy, and she's doing great. I've had her for almost 13 years. But that's not the general usual case, and Joanna the iguana is actually a pretty nice iguana, but that's because I raised her up to be like that, and she also has a pretty good personality, so that is not the norm at all. I don't want you guys to see our animals here at Once in a Wild and think, oh my gosh, I need one of those too. Please know that most of our animals, almost every single one of them, is not the usual case. A lot of our animals are rescues too. Our iguana is a rescue, but that doesn't mean that every rescue is going to be like that. That doesn't mean that everybody's going to be able to take the time that we do and train our animals for encounters. Not all of our animals as well, that you may not see like behind the scenes. Not every animal actually goes out and does encounters. But guess what? They get to have a home here anyway. If any of our animals decide they're not super into traveling and going to encounters, then they don't get to do that. That's okay. We have several animals like that. But the ones that get to travel and go to encounters, they're exceptions to the rule. Just know that. Yes. Yeah, and if you buy a baby exotic animal that is not aggressive now, it might end up being aggressive later. And if you don't know how to work with them the right way, not all exotics are easy to tame down. That is very true. A lot of monitor lizards are like that. We have a wonderful monitor lizard who's a sweetheart named Dino, and Dino is also a rescue. And Dino was a roaming lizard found roaming in a field in Texas. Thank goodness they were caught up before the wintertime. But anyway, not the norm as well. I actually used to have a monitor lizard named Monica back when I was much younger, and Monica would eat your face off. She was not a nice savannah monitor at all. So now we have Dino, and Dino's wonderful. And I've met a few that are very, very nice, but most monitor lizards in general are not good pets for the average person. Well, I better end it there before we talk all night and we go on and on and on. But this has been a great discussion. Thank you so much for joining us, Brian and Nikki, and everyone else watching. Who else was here today? Oh, somebody over on Twitch as well. So glad that you were able to join us, and everybody on Instagram as well. Let me check in on you guys. I know we kind of went off on a pet tangent, but that's always good. And Sunny says bye. And we hope to see you next time here at Once in a Wild Wednesday, where each and every Wednesday we try to go live across social media to make sure and bring the zoo to you virtually. We usually bring a few animals to learn about as well as hang out with. And if you like what you see here and you want to tip or donate, you can do so by visiting onceinawild.com/donate. And you can also tip us at Venmo, Cash App, PayPal, and our Amazon wish list, all found in the link down below. Well, in the description box down below, all the links are there, but also at onceinawild.com/donate. You can find our information for donation there. You can also join us over on Patreon if you'd like to. And over on Instagram, if you're over there, you can go to our description in our bio and find onceinawild.com. Go to onceinawild.com/donate once again and donate any amount of your choosing helps. And if not, you can schedule your own animal encounter. That also helps us out as well. It's the best way to help us out because you get something in return that's a lot of fun, whether a virtual or in-person animal encounter of your choosing. We can service the South Texas area in person and worldwide virtually, so let us know. And for more information, you can find our number at onceinawild.com. And if any of that is not going to be what you're going to do, that is okay too. Just joining us today and helping us out by following and subscribing and commenting and sharing is also a great, wonderful way to help us out as well. So without further ado, we're going to say goodbye, everybody. We are not too close to ordinary, but we love to be your friend. Hold our hands and let's have fun together, singing as loud as you can. Everybody singing once in a while. Together. Once in a while. I want to hear you say once in a while. That's the fun for me and you. Come on. Sorry, Sunny took off. Oh my gosh, that's real life. So, in case you're ever wondering if this is real, it is. So Sunny decided to take a little flight around the room because I guess the music was startling to Sunny, but that's okay. We work through our phobias and fears, don't we, Sunny? You're okay. Okay, you guys, I hope you were entertained by Sunny's crazy flight and flying away, and we hope to see you next time. Bye, guys.